Did Brandon Ingram just prove the doubters wrong in his very first game wearing red and black? While everyone's been whispering about fit, chemistry, and whether he's still got IT after nearly a year off the court, B.I. stepped into Vancouver and showed exactly why Bobby Webster traded for him. But here's the brutal truth nobody wants to talk about. The Raptors lost this game. The Nuggets walked away with a 112-108 victory. And honestly, this is concerning. We're diving deep into what went right with Ingram, what went catastrophically wrong with the starting lineup, and why this preseason opener might be the most revealing game we see all year. Stick around until the end because I'm breaking down whether this team can actually compete in the Eastern Conference or if we're looking at another lost season. What's up, Raptors Nation? Quick court coming in hot from Vancouver, where we just witnessed Brandon Ingram's long-awaited debut in a Raptors uniform. Man, it feels good to finally see this guy in action after waiting since that February trade deadline, doesn't it? We've been starving for this moment. But here's my question for you. Can one man's excellence hide a multitude of sins? Because while Ingram looked smooth, professional, and exactly like the scorer we traded for, the rest of this team looked clunky, disjointed, lost in the mud. Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Are you worried or are you patient? And stick around until the end because I'm revealing the one stat that should have Darko Rajakovic losing sleep tonight. Trust me, you'll see why Raptors fans should be cautiously optimistic while Nuggets fans are already booking their playoff tickets. Let's start with the good news, Raptors Nation. Brandon Ingram looked exactly like a professional scorer, not rusty, not tentative, not like a guy who hasn't played competitive basketball since December 2024. He looked smooth. The mid-range game, butter. His baseline cuts, sneaky and intelligent. There was even a gorgeous dunk off an RJ Barrett drive that had the Vancouver crowd on their feet. Here's what stood out. Ingram wasn't trying to commandeer the offense on day one. He was peppering in professional buckets, reading the game, and doing precisely what Bobby Webster envisioned when he pulled the trigger on that trade. Remember, Toronto gave up Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, and draft capital to get this man. And in his debut, he justified it. The touch, the footwork, the basketball IQ, debut level, it was all there. But here's the question I need you to answer. Is quietly excellent good enough when your team loses by 4 points? Drop a comment below because this is where it gets complicated. Now let's talk about the harsh truth. While Ingram was doing his thing, the Raptors starting lineup looked like they'd never met each other before. And you know what? They basically haven't. This is the first time this five-man unit has played together in an actual game situation, and boy, did it show. Jakob Poeltl was out with a stiff back, which robbed the Raptors of their primary interior presence. Without him, the penetration dried up. The paint was a ghost town. RJ Barrett was the only guy consistently attacking downhill. And while I love RJ's aggression, one guy can't carry an entire offense's attacking burden. The Raptors were stuck in the mud. Meanwhile, the Nuggets were conducting a symphony. Nikola Jokic was out there playing 4D chess, making passes mortals can't even imagine. The Nuggets used him as a genius battering ram, connecting him to three-point marksmen like Cam Johnson and Jamal Murray. They were shredding Toronto's defense. It was clinical. It was ruthless. It was a masterclass. And here's where I get heated. The Raptors promised us high-level pressure defense. They promised it would be a staple of this team's identity. You know what that pressure did? It allowed more liberated steps to the paint for Denver. The Nuggets were walking into layups like they were at an open gym shoot-around. This is unacceptable. Can the Raptors compete with elite offensive teams if their defensive pressure creates more problems than it solves? Let me know your take in the comments. We need to talk about Scottie Barnes, and this conversation is not going to be comfortable. 0 for 6, 1 point, clunky dribbles, clunky shots. Clunky everything that wasn't a pass in transition. For a guy who commands so much of the ball, this is the kind of performance that tanks an offense. Now, I know it's just the first preseason game. I get that. But remember Adam Silver's comments about young stars needing to step up immediately in today's NBA? Barnes has been anointed as the future of this franchise. He's getting max money. And in game 1 of the new era, he looked lost on offense. Let me give you some historical context here. Remember when Paul George struggled in his first season trying to be the guy in Oklahoma City? Or when Bradley Beal couldn't figure out how to lead the Wizards after John Wall went down? This is a pattern we've seen before. Young stars trying to integrate new pieces while carrying offensive load. Sedge, it's hard. It's brutally difficult. But you know what? The great ones figure it out fast. The good news? The bench saved this team from complete embarrassment. Sandro Mamukelashvili was dynamite, cashing triples and giving Toronto an energy injection they desperately needed. The bench unit, paired with transitional lineups, orchestrated an 11-0 run that got the Raptors back within 2 points. That's grit. That's compete. That's the kind of scrappy mentality that defines Raptors basketball. But here's where this gets scary. Even when the Raptors clawed back, they couldn't sustain it. The Nuggets would hit a mini burst, extend the lead, and Toronto was back in chase mode. It's exhausting to watch, and it's a recipe for disaster over an 82-game season. Jokic was standing on the other side of the court like a puppet master with elite shot makers flanking him. When you're facing that kind of offensive firepower, you can't have defensive breakdowns. You can't give up easy buckets. You can't allow penetration at will. The Raptors did all of those things. And let's talk about Grady Dick for a second, because this is important. Grady got extended minutes early in the fourth quarter and struggled. Now, I'll give him credit times to one. The Raptors asked him to take far more difficult threes than anyone else on the roster. His offensive role is tough. But here's the problem. He's given up a lot defensively. Multiple possessions led directly to points that I genuinely believe wouldn't have occurred with someone else in his place. This is the challenge with development players. You want to give them opportunity to grow, but when games are on the line, can you afford those mistakes? That's the dilemma facing Darko Rajakovic right now. Let me ask you this. Why was Jonas Valanciunas making the Raptors' second unit look incredibly small? Toronto got eaten alive on the glass and in the paint whenever JV was on the floor for Denver. This is basic roster construction and matchup management. Where were the adjustments? Colin Murray-Boyles had an intriguing cameo, wrestling with Jokic on one end. Love the fearlessness. Blowing by him for a layup on the other, then tweaking his ankle. He did return, which is positive, but this kid looked ready. He had a particularly slick finish at the bucket late in the game. CMB might be more NBA ready than people think. Here's what concerns me. The Raptors work hard. They climb back into games. They showed that trademark grit we love. But working hard and winning are two different things. The Raptors work hard, The Raptors work hard and winning are two different things. Effort without execution is just exhaustion. Where's the system that allows this talent to shine? Do you think Darko has the answers? Or is this roster construction just fundamentally flawed? Sound off below. Let's talk about the elephant in the arena. Nobody could hit jumpers consistently. Barrett and Mamu from outside, sure. Ingram in the mid-range, absolutely. But beyond that, it was a brick factory. In today's NBA, if you can't shoot, you can't space the floor. If you can't space the floor, you can't create driving lanes. If you can't create driving lanes, you're playing 5-on-5 in a phone booth. This is the exact problem that plagued teams like the 2000s Detroit Pistons. Wait, no, they won a championship playing defensive-minded, grinded-out basketball. So maybe there's hope, but those Pistons had Ben Wallace, an all-time great defender, anchoring everything. Do the Raptors have that kind of defensive anchor? The Nuggets, meanwhile, were cashing threes, finishing at the rim, and running their offense with precision. Kessler Edwards had a dominant stretch for Denver that included 2 blocks. The depth won out, the polish won out, experience won out. This is what worries me most about this Raptors squad. They're talented, but are they ready? Are they cohesive enough to compete with the Cavs, the Knicks, the Magic? Because the Eastern Conference is wide open after those top 3 teams, and spots 4 through 10 are a complete toss-up. Toronto could sneak in, or they could win 35 games and waste another year of Scotty Barnes' development. So here's the bottom line, Raptors Nation. Brandon Ingram looked exactly like the player we hoped he'd be. Professional, skilled, intelligent, and capable of getting buckets when called upon. That's the massive positive from this game. But that, And this is a big, but one player's excellence cannot mask systemic problems. The starting lineup was clunky without Jakob Poeltl. Scotty Barnes had a nightmare on offense. The defensive pressure created more problems than solutions. And the shooting? Let's just say we're going to need more than two guys consistently hitting from outside. The bench showed life. The compete level was there. And that 11-0 run proved this team has fight. But fight without execution is just effort without results. Here's my question for you. And I want you to really think about this before commenting. If you were Bobby Webster right now, what's your next move? Do you stay patient and let this roster figure it out? Do you make another trade? Do you adjust the system? What's your answer? Drop it in the comments because I'm genuinely curious what Raptors Nation thinks is the path forward. And here's the thing. We've seen this movie before. Remember when the 2008 Celtics first put together the Big Three? They lost their first preseason game, looked clunky, and everyone questioned the fit. Then they won a championship. So maybe patience is the answer. But we've also seen the opposite. The 2012 Lakers put together Kobe, Dwight Howard, Steve Nash, and Pau Gasol. War, future Hall of Famers. War, and it was a complete disaster from day one. Chemistry issues, defensive breakdowns, egos clashing. Sound familiar? That's the reality check this team needs. Talent alone doesn't win games. Chemistry, system, and execution win games. Does Toronto have time to figure that out before the regular season starts? We're about to find out. Before you go, make sure you're subscribed to this channel because we're covering every step of this Raptors journey. The good, the bad, and the UGLY. We're riding with this team through thick and thin, and I want you along for the ride. Drop your biggest takeaway from this game in the comments. Are you worried about Scotty? Excited about Ingram? Concerned about the defense? Let's discuss. And if you think I'm being too harsh or not harsh enough, tell me. This is your community. Keep repping that red and black. Raptors Nation, you integrity over everything. We go again. We've got to see more, and guys got to play better. Have a blessed day, and I'll see you in the next video.